No mai haere mai ko Joy King toko ingoa, ko o te rangatira te waihanga kimu o Aotearoa. Hello, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon in one of the first webinar series for this year. Of course, the thing that's on everybody's mind at this time of year is an NZ On Air rebate. So I am very pleased to have Chantal and the team from NZ On Air join me today and talk us through everything that you need to know. So you're not here to hear me ramble on. I will give it straight to Chantal. Go for it, Chantal.
Kia ora everyone, tēnā tātou katoa, and welcome to our webinar on the upcoming 2026 Game Development Sector Rebate. We're so glad you could join us today. So let's start by taking a look at our agenda. First, we'll introduce you to some of our team on the call. Then we'll briefly cover where the GDSR came from, what it's all about, how it works for any newbies online. We'll walk you through a high-level overview of the process from registering and applying through to assessment, payment, accreditation, and audit. And after that, we'll share some key updates and refinements for 2026 based on feedback and insights from the last year. Finally, we'll wrap up by diving into some Q&A to answer any questions you might have. Please feel free to pop your questions in the chat as we go, and we'll come back to them at the end. But first, let's start with some quick introductions so you know who's on the call with you today. You'll be hearing from Toby, our GDSR Program Manager. Give us a wave. Luke, NZ On Air Management Accountant, some finger guns. And myself, GDSR Program Director. We're all here to help support our New Zealand game studios and make this process as smooth as possible for you. Over to Toby.
Hi, everyone. The GDSR has now been running for over 2 years, and we have the third round coming up. The rebate supports the revenue and job growth of the New Zealand games industry by offering a 20% rebate on game development expenditure. That amount is capped at $40 million per year and $3 million per applicant per year. Those are weird. Switch, okay. In the last 2 years, the rebate has given studios stability and the conditions for sustainable growth. The data shows meaningful improvement across the board. GDSR participation, revenue, jobs, and the number of games in development have all gone up. And that's along with the application experience, which we'll aim to keep that way. When we look at it all together, it paints a picture of an industry that is maturing and gaining resilience. Here's a look at the 40 studios that qualified last year. That's up from 33 the year before, and we're happy to welcome them back this year. We also look forward to meeting new faces from the NZ ecosystem. And if you're a new studio registering for the GDSR for the first time, we will also reach out to schedule an onboarding call in March to go through a bit more detail. Now back to Chantal for the eligibility criteria.
Okay, so essentially to qualify, you must be a registered New Zealand business with a valid New Zealand company number and have spent at least $250,000 on eligible game development activities within New Zealand during the last April to March financial year. The GDSR covers costs related to wages for team members actively involved in creating games or game assets and the software and hardware they use to make those games. It does not cover things like operations, legal, or accounting staff. As for the games themselves, the rebate applies to digital games that meet the following criteria. They're designed for entertainment, education, or skills development. They're composed of content, game mechanics, and code, and crucially, they enable the player to influence or change their outcome as they go. In addition, the rebate is available for studios that create game assets specifically for sale to the games industry. However, assets developed only for sale to general consumers are not eligible. Now, there are some exceptions to keep in mind, so let's quickly run through them. A linear interactive experience, for example, a 360-degree movie or an app where the user follows a set path without meaningful choice, is not eligible. Corporate training tools intended for exclusive internal use are not eligible either, nor are games with gambling mechanics that allow for real money winnings or games with any pornographic content. Finally, all eligible products must be available for general public release. So let's unpack what that means with a couple of examples. For entertainment games, these could be available for sale on platforms like Steam, the App Store, or the Nintendo eShop. educational games. These might be sold on Steam or tailored for use in schools. The key point is whether the game is designed for one specific school or available for all schools to purchase. If it's exclusive to one school, it's not eligible. If all schools can buy it, then it qualifies. Serious games, for instance, maybe a surfing game designed for skills improvement, would not be eligible if it was made for just one surfer, but if it's available for any surfer to purchase, it meets the criteria. Game assets are both similar and a little different. They must be easily accessible for lots of studios to purchase. Now back to Toby for an overview of the upcoming steps.
So here's the annual timeline for the GDSR. Registrations are open now through to the end of the month. And after that, you will receive a letter of acknowledgement or decline letting you know if you can proceed to the application round in April. Being successful at that stage, you will then be invited to the GDSR application round on the NZGDA portal, and that round is private, so it won't be available to those who haven't registered. Applications will be open for just over 6 weeks from the 1st of April to Friday, 15th May at 4 p.m. New Zealand time. This should give all applicants the necessary time to complete year-end activities and submit the required documentation. After the close of the application phase, we at NZGDA have until the end of June to assess all applications. And during this time, we might also reach out to you for additional information. Once assessments are complete, we will then inform studios of the outcome and share a letter of offer for the amount to be paid out. Once that's countersigned, we will share instructions to invoice us for your rebate amount. So all in all, this process will take us through to August of this year.
Now let's dive into some of the information you'll need to provide as part of your application in April so you're all prepared. First off the rank is our game details template. You can download an updated copy of this spreadsheet from the GDSR section of the NZGDA website today. This spreadsheet is where we gather information about the games you're submitting expenditure for, so our team can assess their eligibility, and also for some high-level statistical and reporting data. We ask that you include a good level of detail, especially for unreleased games, and we've included examples in the spreadsheet to show the level of detail we're looking for. If you don't provide us with enough information, our team will send it back during assessment and ask for more. So this can hold up the process. Please aim to be thorough from the get-go. In some cases, particularly for unreleased games, we may need a bit more evidence to validate your claim. If that's the case, someone from our team will get in touch to talk through what you might be able to provide. For example, a game design document, gameplay footage, or a prototype build. We want to assure you that any confidential or commercially sensitive information you share with us is treated with the utmost care. It's protected by legislation and handled in strict confidence within NZGDA's assessment team and the Ministry of Business. Even then, most of the information that goes to NB is aggregated. That said, because the GDSR funding involves public money, NZGDA is subject to the Official Information Act of 1982. While it's rare, if we do receive a request under the Act related to your GDSR application, we'll connect with you directly and work closely with you to ensure any commercially sensitive information is redacted before anything is released. Now, on the spreadsheet itself, we've added 2 new columns this year. The first is release date. Ideally, this should be a specific date for any games that have already launched. For unreleased games, you can provide a release window or an estimated year of release. The second new column asks whether the work is being done in collaboration with or on behalf of a New Zealand-based client or co-developer. Together, these additions help us better understanding the timing, context, and eligibility of your projects. Now I'll hand over to Luke to take us through the financial requirements and updates there.
Yes, kia ora everyone. I'm lucky enough to take you through all of the most exciting part of the application process, which is the nitty-gritty finances. And I know that makes people kind of run for the hills a little bit, so I'm hoping there will be some potentially accountants in the call or other people that look at the company's finances, because I will be using a little bit of accounting jargon, but we'll do our best to try and explain what we've changed for this year and what we have going on here. So the first is the financial details template. We started this process last year, and I think it worked quite well for, on our end at least, for aggregating all the data and having it in a standardized kind of format. So first, the things you might notice this year is it's had a small facelift with an updated design and several changes aimed at improving the usability for both the applicants and the assessors. There'll be a few minor wording changes to make things a bit clearer, but in this webinar, I'm going to highlight the 3 tabs that have been updated. First, you'll spot a new line in the spreadsheet asking you to declare your accounting basis going forward, and this will be accrual or cash basis. So although sorry, just noting in that screenshot, it says incurred or paid. So accrual, incurred or paid cash. First, you'll spot a new line. Although the GDSR policy is originally requires studios to submit eligible expenditure incurred during the GDSR period, we realize that some applicants actually operate on a cash basis. So after discussions with MB, we were able to make a small policy update. So you can report your finances using whichever accounting method your business uses, accrual or cash, and this should align with your selected accounting method when you registered with IRD. So generally speaking, larger businesses typically use accrual basis or accrual accounting, and smaller businesses can choose to use or operate on a cash basis. So the main difference here is on a cash basis, you account for money when it is actually paid or received. So essentially the transactions you can see on your bank account and the dates that those happen. On an accrual basis, you record the expenses when the economic benefit is received, regardless of when you pay for it. So the main difference here is timing. So for example, if you have a bill that covers 3 months, that cost would be split into 3 parts, which is 1 for each month. And this helps a business to more accurately track and predict its expenses over time, rather than recording the full amount in 1 month. This distinction becomes important when we consider the start and the end of the eligibility period, which is April to March. So it's important to declare what method you're using so we can take that into account during assessment. Once it's declared, your accounting basis needs to be carried forward over future applications, and we will only accept a change should you declare a genuine business need. If your company does want to change its accounting method in the future, we would go through a change process with you in your next GDSR application to align the books. And as part of this, we're now asking businesses to tell us the period that certain entries cover. So the main example here is annual software subscription costs. So if you're operating on a cash basis, you only needed to provide the information or the period that it covers for invoices that are where it covers for more than a year. But if you're using accrual accounting, we'll need you to provide the subscription or service period for all of the entries. Any payments that have a portion that is covered outside of the GDSR period will need to be adjusted and can be applied in the following year. And this allows us to determine how much of that cost falls within the GDSR eligibility period. Also on this tab, we've added some more context to the source column to help you select the correct transaction type. This typically will align with how the transactions are recorded in your payroll accounting system, and hopefully that should just be able to be copy and pasted in. It won't need too much data manipulation. So just onto the next slide there. Okay, this is the next tab we've reworked, which is opening payroll reconciliation to make it more straightforward. So it now asks for the total salary per period, as well as any accrued salaries for the beginning or end of the month, so that you're able to receive the rebate for the full 365 days of the year. So if you're paid, for example, in March, and maybe a week of that payment relates to the previous period, that should be, that's what we're talking about here with the reconciliation, to make sure that it falls just from the 1st of April to the 31st of March next year. It now asks for the total salary per period, as well as any accrued salaries for the beginning and end of the month. And we've added a column to also include employee names. So we understand that employee names can be sensitive information, and all application documentation is treated as commercially sensitive and confidential. However, including the names here can save assessors hours of work, and it allows us to easily reconcile individual salary amounts with the payroll records, which typically already include the employee names. So it's generally not new information, but it just helps us to reconcile the data quicker. and make the application faster. And finally, for those who use accrual accounting, we've added an additional tab specifically for accrued holiday pay and annual leave reconciliation. So holiday or annual leave pay is a company's liabilities, but some smaller organizations may not account for it this way and therefore is not assessed as expenditure. This was something that was easily missed last year. For those who accrue annual leave, you'll need to complete this section of the template. And please note that if you do include this, we will need to see the reconciliation going forward in all future applications. Not all companies choose to do this, and those who use this method have followed up with us about it anyway, but this new section should help ensure that we're on top of accrued holiday costs. And again, meanwhile, if you're using cash accounting basis, this tab can be basically completely ignored. So yeah, that's the main things, cash and accrual. If there's any questions about these updates or any other parts of the financial template, which I'm sure there will be, feel free to pop them in the chat. Otherwise, you can email us directly and we will go back to you. Back to you, Chantel.
Thanks, Luke. So once you've completed those templates and filled out the application form, your submission is ready to go. Once applications close in May, our assessment team will get to work throughout May and June. During this time, the team might reach out to request additional information about your games or your financial documentation. This can happen at any point in the process, so please make sure to keep an eye on your inboxes. Once assessment is complete, recommendations are reviewed by the NZ On Air board and formally ratified. After that, you'll receive either a letter of offer or a letter of decline confirming your outcome. You can expect this to land in your inbox in early July. As a final note, if any of your games are looking likely to be declined, our assessment team will be in touch before that point to share insights into what may be considered ineligible and to give you the opportunity to provide additional information. From there, once you've received your letter of offer and had it signed by 2 signatories, yes, it must be 2, NZ On Air will countersign it. At that point, you'll be able to issue your invoice to NZ On Air. We're pretty speedy and usually process payments within 10 working days. All right, over to Toby.
All right. So following the rebate payment, there is a requirement for accreditation of government support on your business website, game website, and in the game itself. This exists for 2 reasons. One, so that New Zealand taxpayers see how their support is helping grow our country's games industry. And 2, displaying government support prominently can actually enhance the appeal of both your studio and the New Zealand games ecosystem to international publishers, platforms, and partners, because it signals stability and helps solidify the industry's recognition internationally. And we've already seen examples of this as platforms have expanded their plans for New Zealand studios. So by promoting the rebate together, we're collectively telling the success story of New Zealand's games industry. Now, on the practical side, we understand that updating your game for something like adding a logo can be a significant effort. So we're happy for you to bundle this update with your next planned release as long as it's completed within 6 months of receiving the rebate. We're also aware that there are a few edge cases. For example, unreleased games don't need to include the logo just yet, but we will ask you to verify the inclusion on release. We also want to be reasonable when it comes to client-based arrangements where your team may only have contributed a part of the entire game, or where strict rules might be in place for a given IP. In these scenarios, we're happy to work with you to figure out the best approach. So just reach out via email and we can set up a call to discuss. In terms of in-game accreditation, while the GDSR logo will need to be present in your game, where and how you place it is a creative process that you can lead. For example, would the logo sit best in an animated splash screen sequence or rather a static addition to your menu? Let's consider that. Do you have an about page or credit sequence? Sure, that's a great place for it. But there are many options, and we are generally happy to consider anything as long as the logo is easily visible somewhere in the game.
Lastly, it's worth noting that 20% of all GDSR recipients are randomly selected for audit each year. This helps us maintain the integrity of the program and ensure the proper use of public funds. These audits are designed to be relatively quick, and we have gathered feedback each year to continually refine the process and make it as smooth and accessible as possible. The focus is simply on providing evidence for the expenses you've received the rebate for. For example, employment contracts for the New Zealand-based team members you've claimed, or invoices for the software you have included. If you are selected for audit, you'll be notified in July or August. From there, we'll book an onboarding call to walk you through the process, introduce you to our friendly auditors, and they really are quite friendly, align timing with your schedule, and answer any questions you may have. We know the idea of an audit can feel a bit intimidating, but we've done a lot of work over the past year to make the process as approachable as possible and to reduce the administrative burden on your team. As a helpful tip, one studio last year suggested that while you're putting together your application, it can be useful to create a folder where you save key documents and invoices, so they're ready to go if you are selected. Now, let's run through the rest of our updates for 2026. We've received feedback about the ineligibility of games funded through payments from taxpayer-funded government departments due to the no double dipping clause in our policy, which means that the same expense cannot be funded by taxpayer dollars more than once. We've discussed this extensively with our senior leadership team and MD, and going forward, this clause will only apply to grants, tax credits, incentives, etc. And standard commercial arrangements, such as client or vendor work with government entities, will now be eligible from 2026 onwards. We've also made a few light touch updates to the policy in consultation with MD, simply to improve readability and clarity. One of these includes added guidance around co-development arrangements between New Zealand studios. Now, two studios can apply for the same project, but not for the same work performed on that project. Say one did prototyping, one did production. This means we encourage co-developers to discuss and agree on who will claim the GDSR for which part of the work before submitting the application. If no agreement is in place, we will default to assigning the GDSR to the business that commissioned the work and is bearing the financial cost, typically the owners of the game.
Now, beyond that, we've also made it clearer in our GDSR guidelines that the rebate can be used to subsidize the cost of cultural consultation for games that include Maori, Indigenous, or other cultural elements. Further, we will hold a webinar in March to step through the application process in detail, including the form and more on the templates as well. Applications will be open from the 1st of April and remain open until 4 p.m. on the 15th of May. So get your virtual pencils ready and don't forget to complete the registration form that is available now through to the end of February.